Have you ever been scared of committing to something? I think a lot of people experience this at least at some point in their life. They're presented with all the future versions of themselves they could become. Like when you're finishing high school. What if I go and study at this college? What major to pick? Could I see myself as a doctor or a mechanic or a painter? All of these potential versions of you exist. But terrifyingly, you have to collapse this world of infinite versions of you into just one. I don't know about you, but to me that choice feels so heavy. And you're faced with it every single time you choose to do something, get into a hobby, build or break off a relationship. It kind of freaks me out knowing I can't be everyone, can't try everything, can't experience all there is. So why not refuse? Retreat, isolate. You never have to commit to living the life you're given, and instead you can daydream and get lost in a world of possibilities. In that alternate world, you'll surely find a better you, a version of yourself that's not dragged down by all the ways life gets in the way of your dreams. So, if you can't tell, Hisang's story resonated with me a lot, especially the more I thought about it after the fact. Don't worry, I'll make sure to talk about other stuff in Canto 4, but it would be dishonest if I didn't start with the part that stuck in my brain the most. We finished Canto 4 on stream a couple of weeks ago as of recording this, but I still feel like I am barely ready to move on from it. Also, we're green because of the green. For Yisang specifically, this mirror primarily reflected a perfect version of himself, and it's not hard to imagine why he focused so much on this winged Sang Yi. This escapism is key to understanding his character, his passivity. Even during the happier moments of his flashbacks, he almost feels like a background character. Sure, he's making things, but he's not actively making decisions, not speaking up, letting things pass him by even during life or death moments. Even his suicidality is passive. He doesn't seek death, but he doesn't run from it either. This continues even after the dissolution of the League, all the way until he joins Limpus Company. The writers did a fantastic job bringing us along in this story because it's easy to make such a passive character seem uninteresting or annoying or just not feel like they're worth the spotlight. But they integrated more and more of his inner monologue and his backstory in such a way that by the end, I felt like I understood him better than any other sinner. I know it's partially recency bias, but it's hard not to say he's one of my favorites. Nothing will dethrone Joshu for me, but he's getting dangerously close. I mean, dangerously close. I'm also relieved to say that the other characters in this Canto were a lot more interesting than in previous Cantos, except maybe Sam Cho. His death, unfortunately, once again, felt like it was mostly done for shock factor, and it didn't have much impact on me. Can't say that for Dongrang and Donbaek though. I'm not sure if I should call them side characters or villains or what, but so far they are my favorites in that category, bar none. When we first hear about the terrorists, I made a joke that they're all anarcho-primitivists that want to go back to being cavemen, and I'm so glad that turned out not to be true, at least not entirely. I mean, there was that one lab girl, and we don't know. We didn't get too many details about their organization. Instead, Dongbaek took center stage. And I am so glad she did. Seeing her past genuinely affected me. Out of all the deaths so far, I think I wanted her to live the most. And I know I'm saying this about a literal terrorist organization leader, by the way, but I can't help it. She just deserved so much better than that betrayal. It is a lot harder to feel sympathy for her betrayer, though. Dongrang actively chose the path that destroyed him, after all, at the expense of others, too. And still, knowing how he became this way, seeing his past self made for a much more compelling villain. I loved seeing the difference in his approach to technology to Yisang and how it reflected their flaws as people. Dongrang went down the path of complete utilitarianism and grandiose technological progress, lofty ideas of how he could take part in changing the world, be a part of something greater, while Yisang wanted no part of the world, withdrawing, satisfied with making things quietly and keeping it to himself. or at least his close group of colleagues. Both extremes lead to destruction in their own way. I'm not an engineer or a scientist, but I do make music, and these are things I've struggled with as an artist too. When you make something, do you sacrifice a part of your personhood to reach more people? Do you devote yourself to this idea of greatness? Or do you keep it to yourself? Art that exists only for you. No one there to judge it, interact with it in any way. It's safer, right? At the risk of making sweeping generalizations, neither of those are right. Music is made to be listened to, and it should also reflect a genuine piece of its maker. I know making music in your bedroom doesn't really have the same gravitas and stakes as world-changing technology, but something about this kind of dichotomy between these characters really spoke to me. That's all. Aside from the main story, I also enjoyed seeing a little bit of the outskirts, or something like that. We're kind of starting to ramp up world building bit by bit from here, it seems. Damien showed up again. Honestly, there were lots of little details that will only make sense to me way later down the line, but that's no trouble for me. I finally started making my way through Dante's notes, and in my free time, I've been rewatching certain bits of the game that we've gone through so far. This whole Yi Sang and League thing overshadowed the HP bullets and the tearful thing as well. Whoops. I have a strong feeling we'll come back to that at some point later though, so I'm not going to think about it too much for now. I mean, maybe there's something to talk about with whether or not it's worth it to, you know, make this thing suffer and to have this like utilitarian purpose to it. I don't know. Okay, this is a different conversation that I'm personally not interested in having right now. I think that's more of a philosophical question, and to me, the most interesting part of the console was the characters. Oh, Green Hatsune Miku is a bitch though, that much I can say. That was a good moment. I'm really glad Dante got to keep his memories. It's not unexpected. It would feel kind of weird in a meta sense if we, the reader, knew about all this stuff, but the sorta kinda self-insert protagonist didn't. If there's anything to criticize here, it's that personally some of the imagery didn't work for me. Like the image of Yi Sang with a hole in his chest felt a bit too on the nose. It's not an issue I've spotted too often, but sometimes certain things are spelled out a bit more than I'd like. I've already started reading past Canto 4, so a not so spoilery example would be Dante thinking to himself at one moment, wow, butting into conversations like that is so unlike Yi Sang. And like, they're very purposefully drawing your attention to that and just like yelling, look, it's character development. Like, yeah, dude, I know. I know. It's a bit of a shame that some of the scenes just read better to me if you remove Dante's inner monologue, because they turn subtext into regular text, DOM text. They turn it into DOM text, you know? When usually I prefer a bit less hand-holding than that. If it continues like this, I'll try not making comments about it over and over again unless it really takes me out of the moment. But so far, it hasn't been that big a deal, so we'll see. Honestly, I feel like I could write so much more about this, but going through the entire Canto bit by bit would be tedious, and I really didn't want this to just be a recap, you know? Like, for example, I don't even want to touch the politics of why the League disbanded and how the authorities stifled innovation and scientific brilliance in favor of having more authoritarian control. I think I'll want to make a more politics-oriented video in the future when I have a better understanding of the city as a whole, rather than these kind of scraps of different districts. By the way, I'm going to go through and react to all the IDs one by one. Most of them I haven't seen yet, and it'll be one video per sinner, and naturally the first will be Yi Sang. It should be coming out somewhat soon, so subscribe not to miss it. And in the meantime, we are soon going to be wrapping up Canto 5 on stream, so tune in if you have the time. They typically happen every Saturday at 5 p.m. GMT. So yeah, tell me what you think. Is there anything I forgot to mention? I may or may not make another quick little review analysis for Canto 5 after finishing it, at least if I feel like I have things to say. So until then, see ya.